We come and we look through the scriptures. We're going to be looking at Numbers 13. We've been looking at the passages of the Israelites coming through the wilderness, leaving Egypt. And as we saw on that little clip of the video, they left Egypt and they went out to the promised land. This was the land that God had promised Abraham over 400 years before, and now here they were. They were on their way. But during the time that they were on their way, they moaned and groaned, wanted to go back to Egypt. And that's really speaks of our lives as Christians. You know, we're setting out for the promised land, and yet often we moan and groan as we come across various hardships. The amazing thing is that these people had going before them a fire and cloud, God going before them, and they still moaned and groaned. Last time we looked at the golden calf, and now as we move on and the people move out, we see as we go on the chapters before that they left Sinai, but it wasn't long before they started to complain, and in chapter 11 they complained before the hearing of the Lord, and they complained because they didn't have any meat to eat. They'd been given food to eat, but not meat, and they cried out for that and wanted to go back to Egypt, because if that's if God gave them meat, I'm going to go through this very quickly, and gave them quail. And even that they weren't satisfied. They went out and didn't do as they were told there. And God was angry with them, and some of them lost their lives. And then they move on, and then we find Miriam and Aaron. Miriam, the sister of Moses, Aaron, Moses' older brother, complaining. There they were, they'd been at the centre of things. Aaron had seen so much that God had performed through Moses. He had knew that Moses was the man that was set before them, and yet they complained. And we see that in chapter 12. And in verse 2 they said, "Has the Lord indeed only spoken through Moses?" Very much like us, really. You know, as we go through our lives, we think, oh yes, perhaps the pastor or somebody, other Christian is telling us things, and we might say, are you the only one God spoke to? He's speaking to me. But we don't want to listen to that because it's against us. But eventually, they came to this land in chapter 13. We see them coming, verse 16 of chapter 12 first. Afterwards, however, the people moved out from Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. And there they were, looking over this land that they had been promised for all these years. And God has said, go up into it. But it wasn't quite as simple as that. And if you look at Deuteronomy 1, and go take it from 22, it's a slightly different picture. We get a more fuller picture of what is happening at this time. If I can just turn the pages, I might get there. Alright. I'll pick it up from verse 19. "Then we set out from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness which you saw on the way to the hill country." This is Moses speaking to the people. "On the way to the hill country of the Amorites, just as the Lord our God had commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you who come to the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is about to give us. See, the Lord your God has placed the land before you. Go up, take possession, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has spoken to you. Do not fear or be dismayed." Well, that's fine, isn't it? And they say, "But then all of you approached me and said, 'Let us send men before us, that they may search out the land for us and bring back to us word of the way by which we should go up and the cities which we shall enter.' And the things pleased me. And I took 12 of your men, 1 man for each tribe." Now go back to Numbers 13. Verse 1. "Then the Lord spoke to Moses." You see, now the Lord spoke to Moses. He's down as the Lord. But actually it was the people that came forward, and the Lord agreed to it. "Send out for yourself men, so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of the father's tribe, every one a leader among them. So there was the promised land, and into it these 12 went. And then they returned after a long time, 40 days out there, they returned. Verse 25 of chapter 13 of Numbers. When they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days, they proceeded to come to Moses and to Aaron and all the congregation of the sons of Israel. And verse 27. Thus they told him and said, we went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey. And this is its fruit. And they brought back some of the fruit, great big grapes and all other fruit, and it was fantastic. And they must have thought, wow, this is indeed. God had promised them a land flowing with milk and honey, and they had come to this land. They are now going to go into it, but no, they're not. He said, nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of the Anak there. They were very tall people. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan. And then Caleb said, quieted the people before Moses and said, look, in verse 30, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we're not able to go up against the people. They're too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report. And then in verse 14 we read, then all the congregation, chapter 14 of Numbers, then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. And why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword, our wives and our little ones who come plunder? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So we said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of the assembly of the congregation of the sons of Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they said to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this nation. Only do not rebel against the Lord. And in verse 10, but all the congregation said, let's stone them. This is quite a story, isn't it? For all of those years they had been promised to go into the promised land, that land flowing with milk and honey. They had been slaves in Egypt, they had come out of that land. That speaks of the world, they'd come out of the world and were coming to a promised land. There was God guiding them through a pillar of fire and smoke. They had seen amazing miracles. They had passed through the Reed Sea, seeing it part. They had seen God in the fire and the smoke on top of Mount Sinai. But still, they had this unbelieving heart. They came, let's go back to Egypt. As we live through our lives as Christians, we have come to that point where we realised, where we've come and God has shown that his Son died on the cross that we might have life. Previously we were in the world, we didn't know where we were, we could only sin, we couldn't do anything that would please God. But the moment he came, he died on that cross in order that we could have life in him. He gave us his Holy Spirit. If we didn't have his Holy Spirit, I don't know where we'd be, but he gave us his Holy Spirit to enable us to live the life that he wants us to live. Notice, he wants us to live, not the life that we want to live. It's the life that he wants to live in us, in order that his name is glorified to the rest of the world. But as we go through our lives and we come up against these gigantic problems, we too are faced with that particular issue. Is the problem too big for God? We have seen him working in our lives. We've seen him working in other people's lives. We see in Hebrews 11 and 12, the witnesses that God has had to him in the past. And we see here in Moses, the witness that he has had in the past. We know people that belong to Christ and they've been such fantastic witnesses to us. We see their lives and think, wow, that's fantastic. But yet, when we all come to those problems, very often we sink in the mire. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to the world. It was easier then. According to my memory, it was easier, but it wasn't. It was a tough time when we lived in the world. There was no one to lead us. There was no one to guide us right. Early in my Christian life, I had been a Christian very long. I came to the Lord in the 70s, and I was praying one day, and God said to me, if you want, you can go back. Well, what could I go back to? I said, Lord, I don't want to go back. How can I go back? And this is the opportunity he was giving these people here, and he gives us today. Do you really want to go back into what you were before? Or are you going to trust me in everything that comes upon you? Jesus never promised us an easy life. He never promised the Israelites as they left Egypt an easy life. He said, follow me. And if you remember on Mount Sinai and several times afterwards, he showed himself to the people and gave his commandments, and the people said, all that you have said, we will do. Now they're very easy words. Christ, I will follow you through thick and thin. Aren't they easy words? And it's like the song that we've been singing, I have decided to follow Jesus. The cross before me, the world behind me. That's what this passage in Numbers speaks about, although they hadn't got Christ at that stage, but this is what they had. They had the cross before them. Pains of marching on to that promised land, but they were going to be received into that promised land. It was going to be a fantastic land. The world behind me, but the world wasn't behind them. The world was still with them. The amazing thing as you read through the scriptures is that they actually took with them God's idols from Egypt to carry with them. Although God had told them to discard it, but they took them with them because they were so entrenched in the world of Egypt. We have the world around us today. It's going through some good things, but some very bad things. God has said to us, if you follow me, you are to be different from the world. Not worldly part of the thing, but you are to be different from the world. I want you to walk differently in order that you can glorify my name, that the world, in its mess, might see Jesus and say, that person's got something special. What have they got? And inquire of the Lord and come to him. That is why we're here, to glorify God. It's not to come and glorify ourselves, like I'm speaking now. This isn't to glorify me. I haven't come. Michael and Leticia will come and worship here, lead the worship, and others that lead the worship. They're not coming here saying, well, what good musicians I am, what lovely voice I've got. They have come to lead us to glorify God. And that is our lives. Our lives, our existence is to glorify God. Verse 3 of this song says, though no one go with me, I still will follow. Though no one go with me, I still will follow. Easy words. Very easy words, particularly in the age in which we now live. Are we going to follow the philosophies of the world? Or are we really going to go on, though we are alone? Because no one is going to listen, in power is necessarily going to listen to you. You're going to feel alone at times. And you're going to think, what is the point of all this? But God is with you. He's with me, He's with us. And that is what we cling to have God with us. So when we come to those problems, when we come to those mighty mountains that we are not going to be able to face, give it to God. Jesus said, look, my burdens are light. Come give your burdens to me. Now, that is an easy thing to say. I say, oh, I'll give my burdens to you. But sometimes those burdens are so precious to us. We like to live in the burdens. We like to enjoy the burdens. He says, give them to me, because then we'll have peace. If you haven't got peace, you haven't given the burden up. And I know from experience that is the case. We haven't given that burden up. So Israel went through a bad time. Later on, as we go through, we're not going to go through it now, but as we move on into this, we see them saying, oh, after many have been killed, they say, yes, we've done the wrong thing. We should have obeyed the Lord and gone into that land. So let's go now. And Moses said, don't go now, whatever you do, God's not with you. No, we'll go now. We'll show the Lord that everything's right. We'll go. So they went, and they were repulsed, and many were killed. And that's sometimes the way we deal with it. Yes, we have been disobedient to God. But now we'll go out on our own and do it, God. Because then we'll please you, won't we? God says, no, I want you to do what I say, when I say, not when you think you're just going to do it. If we're living with God, let's live with God. We have the Holy Spirit living within us, and that's the purpose of us following Him. Are we going to follow Him, or are we going to do our own thing? We will do our own thing for a time, but let's repent of those things, and let's come and see Christ living within us, just as it says in Hebrews 12. Just finished with that. Turning pages today. In Hebrews 12, the writer writes, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which is so admired of many, or the sin which so entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus went forward for the joy set before him, the joy not of the cross, but of beyond the cross, of setting his kingdom and his coming kingdom